Let me clear my pipes here. It's 9 o'clock and time to start the meeting of September the 19th. I would like to call on Pastor Doug Vogt from the First Church of God to do the invocation, and Gary Wheeler will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be with you. Let's pray. Lord God, we thank you for your very presence in this world and in this nation of ours, in this county, in this city. We thank you for your power, your ability to do much more than we could ever ask or think. Thank you that we can meet like this, these men and women coming together to do the business of this county, give them wisdom and guidance, direction. May they be sensitive to your very presence and power. May we all be people who are dependent on you. May we listen to you, be God conscious. We thank you for your willingness, your love for us, your willingness to meet with us and to help us, give us the ability to make decisions and deal with problems and plan and set goals. And so guide these people this morning, Father. Thank you for who they are, each one of them. Thank you for the residents of this county as well, and may they prosper. We pray that your hand would be on our lives, and we thank you for all that you'll accomplish in this chamber this morning. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Turn me to place our flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very close.
I know. Or at least the pins are.
These are outgoing clothes.
That's the new RNA dress up.
Got to be uniform. Okay, we're up to item 4. There are no additions or deletions to the agenda. Hallelujah. Number 5.
Wait,
please. What, please? It says no additions or deletions.
I'd like to add something, please. I don't have no on mine. I'd like to add under my matters the October meetings, commission meetings.
Well, we have an addition. Let's get there. Under Sandra, that would be item 13C, October meetings.
Yes.
Or lack thereof. Okay, we have one change.
So moved.
Need a motion?
I'll support that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, under proclamations and presentations, we have a presentation of a proclamation designating September 18th to the 22nd, 2006 as Industry Appreciation Week in Indian River County. Ms. Melnick, are you going to come up and let me read this, and you can take the podium for comments later. Designated September 18 to 22, 2006 as Industry Appreciation Week in Indian River County. Whereas business and industry in Indian River County is vital to the health of the community. And whereas Indian River County's existing industries are key to a prosperous future. And whereas the expansion of those industries account for the majority of new high-wage jobs created in our county. And whereas industry helps sustain the quality of life and tax base in Indian River County. And whereas public knowledge of the contributions made by industry is essential to the maintenance of good community-industry relations. And whereas Governor Bush recognizes the important contributions made by Florida manufacturers by declaring the week of September 18, 2006 as Industry Appreciation Week in Florida, and whereas all residents are urged to take a moment to salute Indian River County industries and employees for the contributions they have made to our community. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the week of September 18th to 22, 2006 be designated Industry Appreciation Week in Indian River County, signed by us all. Selma?
First of all, I'd just like to thank the Board of Commissioners. This is really wonderful. I'd like to thank you on behalf of Macho Products and MDI Products, where we make all those Crocs shoes that everybody's wearing.
I do make them.
And that's all over the news now. And on behalf of the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to just tell you that there is a luncheon at the Richardson Center tomorrow honoring this year's industry appreciation. I'm sorry, Thursday. Wrong day. But it doesn't matter because it's sold out. So in any case, thank you very much. This is great.
Thank you. May I give this to you?
Absolutely.
Good job. That's great.
5B is a proclamation, a presentation of proclamation honoring the Kiev Symphony Orchestra and Chorus. And Gary Wheeler is going to do this on behalf of, was it Rotary? That is,
The Rotary Sunrise, and Tom is here to accept this on behalf of the orchestra and chorus. Whereas the Kiev Symphony Orchestra and Chorus from Kiev, Ukraine, will be making their 8th tour of the United States in the fall of 2006 with 100 voices in a 50-piece orchestra. And whereas the Kiev Symphony Orchestra and Chorus has performed in America's greatest halls, including the famous Carnegie Hall in New York City, Severance Hall in Cleveland, Duke Chapel at Duke University, and Princeton University Chapel, among many others. Their program includes not only great Western classics, but also rich musical heritage from the famous Ukrainian composers. And whereas the Kiev Symphony Orchestra and Chorus will be arriving in Vero Beach on Thursday, October 5th, 2006, and will be presenting a concert open to the public on Friday, October 6th, 2006 at 7:30 p.m. in the Vero Beach High School Performing Arts Auditorium. And now therefore be proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida. The residents of Indian River County welcome the Kiev Symphony Orchestra and Chorus October 5th through the 7th, 2006, and thank them for sharing the musical talents with us, and that's adopted this 19th day of September and signed by all the commissioners. So.
Say something.
Commissioner Wheeler, fellow commissioners, on behalf of the Vero Beach Rotary Sunrise and all of the students of our Vero Beach Orchestra program, we are duly grateful to you for your warm welcome of the Kiev Symphony. The proceeds of this particular concert will not only help the Kiev Symphony members who go back to the Ukraine to help widows and orphans in their community, it will also provide scholarships for those within our own community who have come to an appreciation of the arts and have not had a chance because of financial means to be able to have scholarships so they can learn. And it will also help our local Rotary Club do our humanitarian services right here in Indian River County as well as internationally. So it's a win-win-win, and to each and every one of you, we are very grateful for your warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
well, thank you. And we welcome them. Item 7, consent agenda. Are there any items to be looked at?
I'd like to pull item C, Mr. Chairman.
7C, Tom, any others?
Move approval.
I'll second that, Mr.
We
Chairman.
have a motion to approve the consent agenda except for C. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C, Citrus Springs Village D and F Phase 1 PD developer, the Sun Tree Partners, modification to contract for construction of required sidewalk improvements.
What I'd like, and I know this is talking about sidewalks, and I know they want to modify their extension to complete the sidewalks, but at this time, I know we have discussed Citrus Springs before. And Kim, if you could hit the lights, I know we've been dealing with Citrus Springs out off 5th Street Southwest. And what I'm going to show you, unfortunately, this doesn't have to deal with sidewalks, but it deals with their retention areas that they said that they would do. And what you see up on the screen is one of the retention areas that they have redone, and you can tell it looks just absolutely perfect. And if you could show the other one, Kim, that has the water in it. This is the second one. And you can tell there's a big difference between the two retention ponds. So this one is still not done. It's still not fixed correctly. And I just thought it'd be appropriate at this point in time to bring this up so you as commissioners realize that this group is continuing to move right through this subdivision and continue to say they're going to do those things they're doing. And you see, a picture tells 1,000 words. So as we sit here and begin to give them extension on their time frame of doing sidewalks, I just wanted to let you see the difference of where they claim the retention ponds are done and done correctly.
Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
Commissioner Arthur, do we have something that is telling us that the retention ponds are not functioning properly?
I think Kim, if you show the one that has the water in it, apparently they have it set up. They're supposed to come in and regrade it, and maybe Jim Davis, if Jim's here, can can help out with this. They're supposed to regrade this thing and have it to where it drains directly into one of the ponds that they have. And in this picture that you're looking at, the pond is actually low, but there's still water in this retention area. And I think the biggest problem you have with this is obviously mosquitoes.
Sure.
You know, this water is going to sit here, and it's supposed to seep into the ground, but there's no seepage out in this area.
Those two pictures, I assume, were taken at the same time?
Correct. And like I said, the other retention area that they did fix, you saw it had all the grass in it, is draining correctly. Okay. That's the difference between the two of them.
Are they connected? Are the
Two separate retention areas.
But they're not supposed to totally drain. That's why they're called retention areas.
Well, this one I believe was supposed to drain into the lake, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Chairman. So I don't know if it's supposed to look like this, because if it is, then you do have a mosquito issue, I believe. I don't know. Jim, any help on that?
Jim Davis, Public Works Director. I'm not 100% sure I know what location this is. We have been out to inspect the remedial work that they have done out there, and we were pretty happy with the reshaping and the resodding and the work that they did do. I don't know when this picture was taken or exactly where it was taken, but we'll certainly look into it. And if there's a clogged pipe, or if there's some additional slope work that needs to be done to dry it out, we'll certainly look into it. But you kind of caught me cold turkey on this location. But we have been out there making them do what they're supposed to do and inspecting the work, and they have been responsive, but I don't know exactly what the problem is here.
And I got these photos this morning too, Jim, and I know Lou April, who lives out at Citrus Springs, is here. I don't know if you want him to make a comment on it, or...
Lou, you have something to add here?
My name is Lou April. I live in the villas of Citrus Springs. We have a retention pond in our development, one on the west side of the entranceway, one on the east side. They were redone about 3 times. Every time they redo them, they become muck. They collected mosquitoes. It was a health hazard. The last time they came in and they removed the hard pan, they went down 2 feet and replaced it with sand. On the one on the west side, it still did not drain. They had to come back and redo the other side of the road by cutting a trough so the water could drain into the lake. Now, you saw that picture. That one has worked perfectly. It drains perfectly. It's supposed to be a 72-hour dry retention pond. I know it's a retention pond, but in 72 hours, theoretically, the water is supposed to disappear. The one on the east side of the road, you have 3 feet of water in there. It's been there for several weeks, so that's way past the 72 hours. The water is not going to go anyplace because there's all hard pan there and there's no place to go. There's a pipe that goes from there into the lake. And since water does seek its own level, if the lake is up high, that pond is going to be up high. If the lake goes down, it's supposed to drain, but the pipe is above the lake, so therefore something's wrong and it's not draining.
So they're different.
Right now, it's a total health hazard.
Different types of ponds. One's a dry retention pond.
They're both supposed to be dry retention ponds, except they were designed differently. It looks like it might be a design problem.
And I think, and the only reason I want to bring this up and I know this is under the sidewalk issue, which has nothing to do with this, but this is the only time, and I know, Mr. Baird, we have been dealing with Suntree for probably the last couple of years, and they have done some of those things that they said they were going to do. Commissioners, if y'all remember, this is the subdivision that showed the security gate that had no landscaping whatsoever around it, and pretty much threw your hands up and says, we're going to do what we want to do. I just, when Lou brought this to me, and especially because there's a perfect example of one that was done right, the other one apparently has some draining problems. I just wanted to bring that forward to you all so you're aware that this issue is going to be ongoing, I believe, unless it gets fixed.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. Sir, what phase are these ponds in?
Village A and Village C.
Okay. Because today the sidewalk issue is for, the normal run-of-the-mill, build the house first, put the sidewalk in later so that the trucks and the heavy equipment don't crack up the sidewalk. And
I understand, Bill. Obviously, I don't have any problem with the sidewalk issue. I just wanted to bring this forward, let them know that this is a Citrus Springs issue that isn't going to go away. So
yes, sir. I
just wanted to bring it forward to let the board know that these are.
And I appreciate you bringing it to our attention, but I'd like to know what we're going to do about it if it's not functioning properly, or what the county staff can do
The time frame we're going to do something
Exactly,
about.
yes. I mean,
Well, we will approach the developer and see if we can't get them to resolve it quickly. I mean, this is the first I've heard of it this morning.
okay.
And I think the main thing too, Jim, knowing that the history of dealing with them, Joe, is to put a time frame on it.
Yes,
Because if you don't, they'll continue to say they've done it. And it won't be done.
we've done it in the past. We had several meetings, as you well know. We've got them to do the landscaping. It's been a little bit slow, but we have gone to do that one pond that you saw. They did a very good job on, and we continue to work with him. It's been a long process, but he's done a lot of the things so far. They weren't.
Right.
It wasn't easy to get him to do it, but he has accomplished them, and we'll
We can
work on
maybe.
this.
I'd love to see this done by the second meeting in November, so I can feel good going out knowing that this has been
Okay.
taken care of and done. That'd be
Certainly
great.
been something.
We'll see.
We'll
Jim,
contact-
you'll look into it.
Yes, sir. Sure will.
That's a progress report, please.
Yeah,
Ma'am.
thank you.
Let us know maybe next week what came out of it.
And I move approval of item C.
Second.
Moved and second to approve item 7C. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And let's see, what's next? Public items, item 9. 9A1, county-initiated request to amend the text of the conservation element, the potable water sub-element, and the sanitary sewer sub-element of the comprehensive plan. Bob Keating?
Good morning. I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. This is the first of 4 comp plan amendments that you're going to be seeing today. 3 of them are county-initiated amendments, and 1 is an applicant-initiated amendment. The one we're going to be looking at is a text amendment, but I first want to just briefly go through the comp plan amendment process so everyone knows the procedures that we're operating under. I'd also like to encourage anyone here, any person in the public who has an interest in any of these amendments to get with Gail Carmody. Gail, can you stand up so that we can get your name? This is a requirement by the Department of Community Affairs. If we get the names of people who are interested in these elements, we transmit them to Department of Community Affairs, and Department of Community Affairs make sure that they get notified regarding anything that transpires regarding these amendments. But let me just briefly go through the comp plan amendment process, starting with the comp plan itself. The comp plan is a document that we have. It's required by state law. The state mandates that all local governments in the county have comprehensive plans, and actually those comp plans need to be submitted to and in essence approved by the state. Indian River County adopted its current comp plan, the comp plan that was prepared pursuant to the 1985 Growth Management Act, in February of 1990. And that was substantially revised in 1998 after the county went through what's called the EAR process, Evaluation and Appraisal Report process. And currently we're in the EAR process again, and you're going to be seeing a lot of evaluation and approval report information coming to you in the next year and a half. I think y'all know that the state limits comp plan amendments that local governments approve to twice a year. Local governments can submit as many comp plan amendments as they want, but it's limited to twice a year. Our comp plan specifies that the county has 2 comp plan application submittal windows. We accept comp plan applications in the months of January and July. The amendments that you're seeing today were submitted during the January comp plan amendment window. And just to tell you why it's now September and we're just finally dealing with January amendments, I want to walk you through the process. The process starts in January and July when comp plan applications are submitted to Community Development Department staff. We review them, analyze them, write up a staff report, and go to the Planning and Zoning Commission at a public hearing. Planning and Zoning Commission makes a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County after that, staff writes a staff report for the board, and the board makes a decision as to whether or not to transmit the comp plan amendments to the Department of Community Affairs for its review. If the board opts not to transmit any amendments to DCA, then those are effectively denied. The amendments that are approved for transmittal are submitted to DCA, and DCA and other agencies review those comp plan amendments. Within 60 days, Department of Community Affairs submits an ORC, objections, recommendations, and comments report to the county. After that, staff analyzes the ORC report, makes any changes that are necessary. We write up a staff report, and we get to this point right now, which is the adoption public hearing, where you need to make a final decision as to whether or not to adopt the comp plan amendments. That's not quite the end of the process, but it's close. After adoption, the adopted comp plan amendments are sent to DCA, and in essence, they just review and make sure that the county adopted what it indicated it was going to adopt and not something different. In the case of this first comp plan amendment that we're looking at, this is a text amendment. It actually involves amending 3 separate elements of the comp plan. I'll go through those in a minute. But just to bring up to date on past actions, the Planning and Zoning Commission considered this amendment package here, these 3 elements, the changes to those 3 elements in March. P&Z voted 5-0 to recommend that you transmit the amendment to the Department of Community Affairs. At your May 2nd meeting, you did agree to transmit them to the Department of Community Affairs. DCA sent an ORC report back to us in mid-July, and they had no objections, recommendations, or comments on these. As I said, this amendment involves amending 3 separate elements of the comp plan. One is the conservation element, and this is to add a new policy to the conservation element. Actually, this is a request from the Marine Resources Council that county staff thought was a meritorious request. It actually involves adding a policy whereby the county and the Marine Resources Council can get additional points on Florida Community Trust, FCT, grant applications, and those are grants. That's a grant program we use quite a bit to get funding for our land acquisition program. It's real unfortunate we're coming to you 1 week too late to get points for the last cycle, but it really wouldn't have made a difference. The Marine Resources Council scored too few points that the additional points that they would receive if we had this policy in place wouldn't have made a difference, and the same with one of our 2 projects. The good news is one of our projects did get funded in this cycle. The other did not. But this policy, if you approve it, just indicates that the county will coordinate with nonprofits and state agencies in our conservation program. It will give the county and nonprofits additional points in future FCT grant applications. The other changes are to the potable water sub-element and the sanitary sewer sub-element, and the changes to each of those elements are essentially the same, and those changes qualify exactly where urban services, water and sewer, can be expanded outside the urban service area. Currently, there's really a disconnect between the county's allowance for public schools to be located outside of but contiguous to the urban service area boundary, and where we allow extension of water and sewer services outside the urban service area boundary. Currently, we don't allow extension of water and sewer services outside the urban service area boundary west of I-95. And I think y'all know we've been dealing with the West County Initiative for the past couple of years, and there's a good chance eventually there will be a public school located outside of but contiguous to the urban service area boundary, and we need to amend these policies so water and sewer can be provided in those cases. Also, currently, our water and sewer extension outside the urban service area policy is limited to properties that front on a public road that is an urban service area boundary. And we've got situations where schools are coming in or can come in where they are contiguous to the urban service area boundary, but that is not a public road where they're contiguous. So in essence, these two changes really just correct some oversights really that really need to be corrected so we have consistency among all of our policies. The other point I want to make is really in reference to what I said earlier too. With the evaluation and appraisal report process that we're going through now, you're going to get the opportunity to relook at our entire comp plan, all the objectives and policies, and look and make sure everything makes sense instead of looking at things on a piecemeal basis like we do here. I mentioned to you why we're doing the change to the conservation element policy. And as I said, it should help in future FCT grant applications. Also, I mentioned why we're doing the water and sewer sub-element changes. The next two maps just show you some situations where we do have property that's adjacent to the urban service area, but not adjacent to a roadway that's an urban service area boundary, which really illustrates some of the reasons that we need to make this change so that our policies are consistent with one another.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Water and sewer outside the urban service area. Can a school system decide, private or public school system, where they want to have this, and we have to automatically extend water and sewer lines?
No. Actually, let me go back. A few years ago, the legislature passed a rule that said local governments in their comprehensive plans need to specifically identify where public schools are allowed. And the county amended its comp plan to allow public schools anywhere in the urban service area, but also outside the urban service area if the public school will be located contiguous to an urban service area boundary. So actually, public schools cannot locate a half mile or a mile away from the urban service area boundary.
Unless the boundary is changed.
Right, right. If the boundaries change, that's different. But assuming that the boundary change stays the same, public schools are limited by our policies where they can locate. And even wherever they locate, it would be dependent upon the utilities department determining that it's financially feasible to serve them. It wouldn't be automatic.
Even if say it wasn't financially feasible for us to do this, but they agreed to pay it, as has happened before.
I think in that case, I don't really want to speak for the utilities department.
I'm just trying to find if there's a gray area or there's a glitch in here that we really need to know about, or if this is really clear cut.
I think it's pretty clear cut.
Okay.
I have a question.
You had a question?
Yes, sir. We're talking about schools, and all of this talks about the school, but is this change specific to schools? Because I read down here, it says we do not currently allow utilities provided to that site and so on and so forth. We talk about schools, but when we change this element, it applies specifically to schools, not other developments, correct?
But churches are allowed outside the urban service area.
But, yeah, but the same thing, they have to be along a roadway. Right.
And we're only talking public schools, we're not talking private, because absolutely, churches are private schools.
But they're
right
outside.
Okay, couple of questions. Let me answer those questions separately. First of all, this policy really relates to any uses outside and when urban services can be extended. And this exception that we've had in the plan, I think, since the beginning, since 1990, recognizes that if we have utility lines in an area and there's a single-family house or a school or some other use adjacent to, contiguous to those lines, it makes sense to extend it there. And this is just correcting the fact that the lines couldn't be extended unless they were in a road that was a urban service area boundary, and it corrects the prohibition on doing it west of 95.
But the point is a private school could, if they were adjacent to, or a church, or a house, or, I mean, anything that's basically adjacent to the urban service boundary, whether it's east or west now of 95, and whether it's on or off a public road now can tap into. It's really not an extension of urban services, just to tap into urban services.
That's correct. And let me just tell you, our current policy deals just with public schools. Public schools can locate only adjacent to an urban service area boundary. We don't have a prohibition on private schools, but they could not get water and sewer if they weren't either inside the urban service area or contiguous to it.
Well, they don't have the ability that a public school has to do kind of what they want to do, as far as locating and buying property and building a school outside the urban service area, do they?
Well, actually, public schools are controlled by you as to where they can locate, in the sense that through the comp plan, the Board of County Commissioners says that the only place outside the urban service area that a public school can be located is directly contiguous to the boundary.
So suppose somebody came in and had 1,000 acres that was contiguous, and they wanted to, and I realize we got zoning and other things to go, but they wanted to put a development of some type in. Then under this, we could, and it's not along a public road, but it's contiguous to our boundaries, then they could potentially get water and sewer. Is that correct?
Yeah. No, there's a limitation on how far these lines can be extended from the edge. It's 500 feet.
So, in other words, if they build the school, you can't run the sewer or water farther than 500 feet? What if they set a building 1,500 feet back? I mean, how many acres do they have at the new school going up there?
Which new school?
At
66.
The controversial one.
Oh, I don't know which one you're talking about. That'd be a quarter mile.
A quarter of a mile. So
yeah.
Would they could only run it 500 feet, or could they run it a quarter of a mile back if they own all the property?
Okay, what they can do is the actual public lines can be run 500 feet back. They could have a service line that went further.
But we'd have to put in a line big enough to handle the additional service. So we'd still be, whether they're doing it or we're doing it, we're still kind of expanding it maybe a quarter of a mile.
Yeah, yeah.
And that would apply to anybody, not just schools, but anything contiguous to the...
But it couldn't be now we do have allowance for some types of development projects. If it's an ag PD can get water and sewer outside the urban services. A new town can get urban services outside the urban service area. But if it's a regular, say, 5-acre standard subdivision or affidavit of exemption, only those lots that are adjacent to the urban service area could get the urban services.
Okay. My concern is I'm just wondering if we're encouraging expansion by changing this and loosening it up a little more than what we currently allow.
Actually, we feel with this we're just correcting an oversight.
But oversights can create more liberal policy.
Well, but without that, you can't have a school west of 95.
Right.
And that's not proper planning.
Well, I don't know. There's,
that's in the city of Fellsmere.
Yeah, you can have a school west of 95. In the city of Fellsmere,
right.
You can have a school.
Right.
You can have...
but I'm talking that is governed by the Indian River County's comprehensive plan.
Well, it's only the county.
Right. But the city of Fellsmere, obviously, we've got a school west of 95.
And they keep annexing.
They could have it in the urban service area.
Well...
And how much, down here we're talking about 60 primarily, and I know the commission has rezoned a lot of property out there down around 8 and 6, but I don't know what the population is going to be or the justification for a school. I know at Point West, they've talked, set property aside, and I don't know what's going to happen with that either.
Right.
So I don't know that we need to, I just question at this point whether we need to make provisions for that when it may not ever exist.
Mr. Chairman, just if I may, I think it would be prudent for us to allow this so that we can simply start to have the school district plan in the event that they do need a school out there.
They still plan.
I don't think I wouldn't plan if I didn't have a commitment from a commission allowing this outside the urban service area.
Well,
Can we,
to piggyback on that, have they come to you for a plan?
Actually, it's kind of us went to them in the sense we've been dealing with the developers of the West County Initiative, and they've been looking at some sites for an elementary school that would be west of but contiguous, or adjacent to but contiguous to the urban service area line. But we've indicated since that's west of 95, right now the policy wouldn't allow extension of water and sewer. And the school board has indicated that that would be an appropriate site in this area, because we're looking at about 2,300 residential units in that area.
Isn't that one of the reasons that neighborhoods begin to form is around schools?
Yes. Yes.
The other thing, Bob, when you mentioned new towns or villages, do they come under the same rules where they have to be contiguous, or can they be 5 miles out and run sewer to them?
Well, we do recognize for right now and maybe indefinitely, new towns are really off the drawing board. They're not doable right now, but the concept would be, no, this wouldn't apply to new towns, that a school could be incorporated within the new town design.
Well, I don't know. I think there's time to change this if the school needs to go there. I mean, nothing happens overnight in government. I mean, if that becomes a reality. But anyway.
could we get back to your presentation now?
Let me just, with all comp plan amendments, an important policy is policy 14.3. This policy really is oriented to making sure that there's a need to amend the comp plan, and this policy says one of 4 criteria need to be met before the comp plan is amended, and those criteria are that the proposed change would correct a mistake in the comp plan, correct an oversight, it would address a substantial change of service circumstances, or it involves a swap. In this case, as I mentioned before, we feel that this is an oversight and that the policy should be changed to be consistent with the other policies that we have in the comp plan. And both the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff recommend that you do adopt the proposed changes to the 3 elements.
We've approved this
Thank you.
before.
Yes.
Now, do you have any comments? Questions of staff? None now. All right, this is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience wishes to be heard in this matter, now's the time. And make your name known to Mr. Carmody. Your name and address.
Bob Johnson, Carlwyn Subdivision. The question is, was the 43rd Avenue decision included in this comprehensive change that was approved by the board earlier this year?
Actually, that's going to be the next item that we discussed, transportation element changes.
We're on one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, Mr. Brackett.
Mark Brackett, 1915 34th Avenue. Coincidentally, about 3 months back, the school district contacted me, both written, and we had a face-to-face meeting, and they're requesting that we look at a piece of property that we own that meets the west of 95, adjacent to the urban service district line, for donation to the school district, not a purchase. Not 90,000 an acre, but a donation. So I don't think they're planning on building the school tomorrow for sure, but I think the discussions on acquiring that site are happening right now. So just throw that in the mix for what it's worth, for a middle school, not an elementary school.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Yes, sir. Mr. O'Brien.
Peter O'Brien, 2255 11th Lane. I have no concern with expanding the water and sewer to school sites that meet the comprehensive land criteria. But it just seems in discussion this is opening up to a lot of other types of projects that I think we may not want to do. So the one thing I'd ask the commission is maybe just change the wording of this to apply the change specifically to public schools and no other uses at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Give your name and address to Mr. Carmody as you go by. Any other comments from the audience? All right, I'll close the public hearing. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yes, I move that we approve staff recommendation for the plan text amendment by adopting the attached ordinance.
Okay. I'll second that for discussion.
And for clarification, is this, and I think that was my first question, is this pertaining just to public schools?
No.
Right.
We currently have the policy in there right now that any use that is contiguous to a road that is an urban service area boundary, where that use is outside the urban service area, the county can extend water lines to it. So if we have a single family house that's adjacent to Kings Highway, south of 60, where Kings Highway is the urban service area line, or south of Oslo where it is, utilities can give them water and sewer right now. As I said, the difference that this is going to make, it's going to allow extension of water and sewer to properties that are contiguous to the urban service area boundary, where that boundary isn't necessarily a road. And it's also going to allow have the same allowance west of 95.
Well, how did the schools get it? I mean, how did I hear that this was for the schools? This is for everyone. The umbrella is everyone.
It is, but the reason that we see it's necessary to make the change is schools.
And they've come to Mark Brackett to already do this.
No, Mark.
I'm just trying to understand this completely.
West of 95, actually, we've been looking for an elementary school site. The school district came to Mark for a middle school site.
And why have you been looking for an elementary?
Because we review development projects and we look at the big picture and we try to make sure that when we approve development projects, and particularly a number together, that all of the services that are necessary for those projects.
We have school concurrency to worry about too. We're one of the pilot districts with counties with school concurrency. Yes.
I'm understanding that completely. I'm trying to understand the planning here.
Go ahead.
It's called a vision.
I think we work with the schools. I think it's to make it clear this is a joint effort to assist the schools. They tell us they might be looking, and it's a joint effort. We're trying to.
And that was my point in going through all this. All we talk about schools, but this is all inclusive. Mm-hmm. If the school is what created the need for this, why not limit it to schools and make it specific to schools rather than all inclusive?
Because you'll have a church come along and might want to do the same thing if you allow a school.
It's already permitted for homes.
Yeah. And it's already on that way east of 95 right now.
Yeah.
And an ag PD.
There's no real change.
And just in looking at community planning, I mean, on Sunday, if we have 2,000 units that are already out there, a community church would make sense.
Well,
that's a part of the community.
That's just something picked out of the air that you're talking about now.
No, church is Sunday, every Sunday. And
No, we're not talking Sunday. We're talking.
I'm talking. We've got approved units out there already, and those approved units that, regardless of what we do here today, they're approved units. Now, we're going to make a determination whether or not the school district can have a school outside the urban service area, because the approved units do not have at this time an area designated for a school. I mean, we've got 2,000 units with no school, and so the school district has entered into. I assume they come to Bob and said, "We're trying to do some planning here about where we need future schools." Bob said, "Well, we've got 2,000 units west of town. Good. We need to find a school out there now." Good, but you can't put a school out there west of town right now because the comp plan won't let you.
We could if we made it specific to schools.
We could.
But even those developments, if they're outside the urban service boundary, you go to the 1 to 5, to 1 to 10, to 1 to 20. I mean, that's not going to change.
No.
I think what you're concerned about, Commissioner Wheeler, is all of a sudden that urban service boundary goes away. I think the density still remains the same. That's not going to change only because you're going to allow water and utilities to it.
And I'm concerned about water.
Yeah.
That we're just opening this door And I don't mind opening the door for schools and things, but I really want to understand what we're opening the door for. And I don't think we all understood that this was just wide open.
What I'm concerned about is maybe not sprawl, but creep, and we're just getting a step closer and a step closer and a step closer. Everything's an evolutionary process, and that's my problem with it.
I think the problem too, though, is if you say, we don't want anything, period, outside the urban service boundary.
I'll go with schools.
Well, but then you're going to have the church come along. So wait a minute, you allowed that for the school. Why can't we put a church there?
And it could be because the comp plan doesn't say so, but proper community planning. Right now you can have churches outside the urban service area, and you can do it out there right now without the urban service attachment to it. It's going to be there.
That includes schools and churches, where it's not all inclusive.
I don't know what else we'd be missing if we didn't do that.
Mr. Chairman.
The public hearing is closed, Mr. Johnson.
But I don't have a problem with him speaking if you don't
either.
Go ahead.
Does this, Bob Johnson, Corwin subdivision, does this mean that the school can put their school next to this subdivision that's already approved, and then the subdivision gets water?
No.
Because the school's next to the urban service area?
Well, the subdivision has water, and the school can get it because it's there.
Thank you.
I guess.
That's the way I interpret it.
Yeah. Any further comment?
Would you have a problem just putting schools and churches maybe in there? What would be the downside of that?
The downside is, I think the complaints that we've gotten a lot of times that we have water lines running right down a road where the road's an urban service area boundary, and someone's got a house that abuts the road and he can't connect to it. What we did
he
is
know
just,
that when he built there?
But they can, under a current
Not if they're west of 95.
Well, if they're west of 95, then and everything out there is 10-acre lots. I don't know if anybody's going to pay $50,000 to run a pipe 1,000 feet to their house.
They wouldn't have to. All they'd have to do is, Mr. Chairman, all they'd have to do is request a tap, and they've got the impact fees, and wherever they locate their house, according to the setback requirements of A2, they could tap into the urban services.
And we're talking really, you're not talking many homes out there at that.
No,
and most of them are going to probably go with septic and well anyway.
That's why I think this is a non-issue that we're debating.
Well, and where?
Thank you.
Yeah. Where has all this changed from the time they came before us the first time?
We're more knowledgeable.
Me being the king of flip flop, I'm trying to figure out where this is. Why? And I'm not trying to be funny.
It's not a big issue. Why don't we just limit it to schools and churches?
Mr. Chairman, if I may take a chance on antagonizing you and just take a moment, why don't we just eliminate residencies? So we don't have to be bad guys and say we don't want churches or something like a church or a school. Why don't we just limit it to no residential use? So you want to put a church in out there, you can. If you want to put a school in out there, you can. And no residential.
And the only place that would apply is west of 95.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry.
Any further comment on this motion? I assume you're ready to vote? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
3-2, motion carries. Public item number A2, county initiated request to amend the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. Bob?
Phil Mattson, Indian River County MPO Staff Director. And let me start out by saying a lot of the background that Bob introduced in his presentation applies also to this comprehensive plan element amendment. This is the transportation element. It too is staff initiated, and it's a text amendment. We're trying to achieve two things with this amendment, and the first is to update the comprehensive plan for consistency with the 2030 long-range transportation plan. The second is to update the roadway improvement project listings. These are textual changes, as I've mentioned, substantial revisions to maps, tables, and figures. With the exception of one sentence that we added for the benefit of Department of Community Affairs in one of their objection reports, nothing at all has changed in this document since it was approved by the P&Z for transmittal and approved by the County Commission for transmittal back in May. Comprehensive plan may be amended only in such a way as to preserve the internal consistency of the plan. There are several justifications for plan amendments. One is mistake, another is oversight. We're using the third one in this case, substantial change in circumstances. That change in circumstances occurred in December of 2005 with the adoption of the 2030 Long Range Transportation Plan update. This is a federally required process that MPOs have a long-range transportation plan and that it be updated every 5 years for a new horizon year. This was approved by the MPO board in December 2005. There are more than 20 places in this document that reference the old 2025 plan. Those all had to be updated and amended, and they were back in May. Here's some of the highlights of the 2030 plan. We see a lot of new highway activity. Our screening process depends on estimating a future year population for the county and then superimposing that future demand on the present highway system and finding deficiencies. So one of the substantial new projects that we saw is a 6-laning US 1 from 26th Street to 510. We also have the 4-laning of 58th Avenue and Laconia Street extension as some of the new highway plans that were in the 2030 long-range plan. It is a transportation plan, not simply a highway plan, and as such, we amended our bicycle paths and sidewalk networks as well as new transit routes. We're trying to initiate transit service to Fellsmere at this point as we speak, looking at extending some of the hours on our transit routes so that they can be commuter-friendly. Finally, looking for another route to St. Lucie County. This is a table of all the places that these changes were made to make the 2030 plan consistent. In terms of the individual roadway project listings, we are also changing what had originally been planned as a 5-lane section of 27th to 43rd Avenues, which was replaced as a 3-lane section with a continuous center turn lane. These are being proposed to be changed back to 4-lane roadways with a landscape median. And we've all seen the typical section in right-of-way for the proposed 4 lanings of these roads. This is the one concern that we received in our ORC report, which was dated, July 17th. One concern for the transportation element was that for SIS facilities, local governments are required to adopt the department's level of service standards. SIS is a new acronym, just what we needed for Strategic Intermodal System. Okay, this is the interstate system plus roadways that they've designated at the DOT level as important for traveling from one area to another. State Road 60 west of 95 is really our only other SIS facility. So they've taken an interest in the SIS network to make sure that it serves its purpose of traveling from one part of the state to the other, and they are asking us to adopt the department's level of service standards. Our response was to change the language and insert in policy 1.1, which is on page 128, an indication that our accepted level of service standards here in the county will apply to SIS, Florida Intrastate Highway System, and TRIP funded facilities. TRIP, as you know, is the new program that required us to enter into an interlocal agreement with 3 counties. So on all these types of roads, SIS, FIHS, and TRIP facilities will be adopting FDOT's level of service standards. I've also added an attachment at the end based on a conversation with our DOT district people to show what those standards are. So there's a fairly dry table here in Appendix 1 that has what the actual level of service volumes are per the DOT standards. That pretty much sums up the text amendment. Once again, it was to make those changes to the program list of roadway projects and to adopt our 2030 long-range transportation plan. Once again, here are all the places that we've changed this document. This was approved by both the P&Z and the board for transmittal in substantially the same form as it was today, with the exception of the DCA response, and we are requesting make a recommendation to approve it in the same form at this point to finalize the process. And if there are any questions, we're here.
Thank you, Phil. Any questions of Mr. Mattson? Okay, I'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone interested in speaking to this item? Mr. Johnson.
Bob Johnson, Carlwyn subdivision. I participated in the 2030 plan, and each year, according to the MPO plan, there's changes made to the plan. Some roads are deleted, some are added. So it's not clear to me if we put this into the MPO that this is the 2030 plan is the basis for the comprehensive plan, and we make changes throughout the each year between now and 2030, say, whether this is automatically part of the new comprehensive plan, or do we have to make changes to the comprehensive plan when we change the 2030 plan? Thank you.
You have an answer, Tim?
Actually, state law requires local government transportation element portions of their comprehensive plan to be consistent with the MPO long-range transportation plan, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. We're adopting the MPO long-range transportation plan into the comp plan so that they're going to be consistent. Now, we do every year we do capital improvements programming where we decide exactly which projects are going to be built, and we reflect those that were recently completed. So that's what's done on a regular basis. But this is incorporating the long-range transportation plan as a whole in the county comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mr. Keating. Any other comments from the public? All right, I'll close the public hearing. What's your pleasure?
Can I ask one question, please?
Yes, you may.
Capacity improvement, the definition of that.
Capacity improvement is typically widening of a linear roadway section. It could also include an intersection improvement, such as extending a turn lane, adding a new turn lane. And there's a whole new category of capacity improvements, TSM, which can include traffic signal synchronization, intersection geometry, like changing the 5 points intersection to 4 points, spot type situations. But I'd consider all of these capacity improvements.
Generally, to go back, a 2-lane road, generally, depending on how many signals per mile, has a capacity of about 860 hourly directional trips. A capacity producing improvement would be a change to that roadway that increased that capacity. And generally, like Phil said, it's a road widening. Usually when we go from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road, we're going from the 800 hourly directional trips to around the 1,600. So a capacity producing improvement is one that increases the capacity. An improvement that's not a capacity producing improvement would be a turn lane into an individual project, something like that.
So all capacity improvements that we would do on our roads would have to be on our standards, not the SIS standards.
Our standards and the state standards are pretty much the same. So, yeah, the capacity improvements are typically to our standards. We get to choose what standards we want, with the exception of the SIS roads and anything we pay for with the TRIPS program. That time, we don't have any choice. We have to go to the state standard.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move staff recommendation.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Public item number A3. County initiated request to amend the capital improvements element of the comprehensive plan.
This is the third of the fourth comprehensive plan amendments that you're considering today. And this is an amendment to the capital improvements element. I do want to emphasize for everyone's benefit, we did not put the entire capital improvements element in your backup, just like we didn't put the entire transportation element in your backup.
Thank you.
We would have killed a bunch of trees. It probably would have been another 300 pages. We did put it on file in the board office, and I think it got put on the website. So even though you don't have the full copy of the capital improvements element, it is on file in the board office. And let me tell you why we are amending the capital improvements element. The first reason is to recognize changes in public capital facilities needs and changes in their funding. Another reason we're doing this is to implement new state requirements relating to the capital improvements element. Senate Bill 360 emphasized that local governments have to annually amend their capital improvements elements. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They do need to do it. Another reason that we're doing this is Indian River County was also selected as a capital improvement element pilot community, just like we were a school concurrency pilot community. And because of that, we've gotten some technical assistance from a consultant that DCA hired, and therefore we had a little more requirements than other local governments to adopt the capital improvements element sooner. And as I said, the last reason is to comply with state requirements to keep the capital improvements element amended. Just to go over past actions, as with the other amendments, the Planning and Zoning Commission considered capital improvements elements amendments at its March 23rd meeting and voted 6-0 to recommend that you transmit the amendments to DCA. And at your May 2nd meeting, you unanimously voted to do that. Just to tell you, Senate Bill 360 made some changes in capital improvements element requirements. One is that local governments have to, when they submit their capital improvement element changes every year, they have to demonstrate that the capital improvements element is financially feasible. The capital improvements elements can't be just wish lists. We have to have the costs in there as well as the revenues that are available to cover those costs. This first year, Senate Bill 360 says that local governments have to adopt a financially feasible capital improvements element by December 1st of 2007. After that, if local governments don't do that, they're not going to be allowed to amend their comprehensive plans. Senate Bill 360 also made some changes in the procedure for amending capital improvements elements, and really only one public hearing is necessary to do it. In this case, we packaged the capital improvement element changes with the other comp plan amendments, and we're taking them through the same procedure. So we're in essence doing 3 public hearings. I do want to just highlight some of the changes in the capital improvements element. One is we did change the concurrency management section of the capital improvements element to reflect the proportionate share mitigation requirements of Chapter 360 and also the proportionate fair share mitigation ordinance that the county adopted back last spring. We also updated and revised all of the tables and all of the corresponding text. Actually, at this point, I want to give some credit to the other county departments. We worked real closely with Budget, and Budget spent a lot of time on this. Actually, you should look closer to the Budget people than the planners when you deal with all those numbers and dollars and cents, and they did look at all of them and work with us closely. We also worked closely with all the other departments. You see within here all of the capital improvements that are programmed over the next 5 years are reflected in here. So this reflects utility department improvements, public works department improvements, emergency services department improvements. So we worked with the staff of all the departments, and this was a coordinated and cooperative effort of everyone. We've got some particular parts of the capital improvements element that I want to point out to you. First of all, Appendix A is the county's 5-year schedule of capital improvements. And just to point out, the transportation improvement portion of that is a total of $315 million, which is a significant amount for transportation improvements of a county the size that we are. And I think it illustrates the county's commitment to make transportation improvements and maintain adequate levels of service. Appendix B is the priority transportation capital improvements, and those are capital improvement projects where we can count their capacity right now because this table meets DCA requirements. It's got a specific start date and a specific completion date for each of those projects. And those projects are all within the first 3 years of the 5-year capital improvements program. Appendix C is the entire improvement project listing from the MPO long-range transportation plan. So actually what we're doing here corresponds closely to what Phil just presented to you a little while ago in the transportation element. The objection that DCA had regarding the transportation element, also applied to the capital improvements element because the capital improvements element includes level of service standards for all of our facilities. And so that objection related to this element as well. So the change that Phil indicated was made to the transportation element was also made to the capital improvements element. That addresses DCA's objection. As I mentioned to you before, policy 14.3 is an important comp plan policy. It really is the policy that needs to be met to demonstrate that the comp plan is allowed to be amended. In this case, it's a change in circumstances. We have a change in circumstances every year that warrants amending the capital improvements element. With that, staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that you adopt the amendments to the capital improvements element.
Thank you. Bob, any questions?
Yeah, I see Jason's here. I have one question in the recreation element portion of this. The South County Park building, is that 2.2 or 2.5 million?
I think that's in there at about $2.3 million.
2.3, okay, thank you.
And I have a question along financial lines is, since we've started with Senate Bill 360 and the pay-as-you-go, do we have any dollar figures of how much money we have in the pay-as-you-go program right now in the county's account?
We have not brought any money.
Okay.
We haven't brought any to you. We have, I think, we have at least one at the county attorney's office waiting for the developer's agreement to be developed, and we've got two others that I think are also ready for developer's agreements. Okay. So we have processed 3 of them.
Okay.
Joe, do you have a comment?
No, just that we don't have any money yet.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
What Joe said? Joe said he didn't have any money?
Say that, Joe.
Yeah, Joe always says that, yeah.
I wonder why he had tears in his eyes. Jason, you have anything? No. Any other questions on this item? All right, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone from the public wish to address this? Mr. Johnson.
Bob Johnson, Carlwood Subdivision. With all these changes, which were not included in the backup and detailed and tables changed and what have you, the question I have was the land use map, which is on the wall here, is that any changes reflected in that map at all?
Not yet.
No, this is just the capital improvements element. It's mostly a dollars and cents element.
All right. Any other questions from the audience? Mr. Paladin?
Joseph Paladin. On the Senate Bill 360, is that the only sanction that the county would have if they didn't adopt Senate Bill 360 by December 1st?
In our case, we did adopt it already, but I think the only sanction is that the local government cannot process comp plan amendments.
So it wouldn't have anything to do if they're state funding or you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. I was just wondering what the sanctions would be if it wasn't adopted, because so many counties haven't adopted it yet.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure the legislature's finished interpreting it yet. I believe we're going to.
And I just wondered if we had any extra benefits by being probably the only county as of now that has adopted it, if there's any benefit to it.
They'll just extend the deadline.
Well, and we're having the opportunity to take advantage of the pay-as-you-go, and so that and have the developers contribute to some intersections so we can gradually improve them.
And on the pay-as-you-go, thanks for bringing that up. On the proportionate share, has it been outlined as to exactly what the parameters are and when you pay, and when you have to pay, when you can pay?
That will probably be answered whenever we get finished with the pending ordinance.
910?
Yes.
Bob, would that be identified in 910?
Actually, that's the prop share ordinance that we did approve was an amendment to 910, and it's in there specifically that the prop share payment needs to be made at the time that the prop share agreement is approved, along with the other impact fees paid at that time.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So is it, Mr. Chairman, so is that what's holding the one up in the attorney's office then now? Because that's contrary to our ordinance that we have in place.
What are we talking about, Wesley?
We are talking about the proportionate share for the Senate Bill 360.
No, I got that, but
okay.
you just now inserted something else. What are we talking about here now?
That the pending ordinance and the proportionate share, if that's what the Senate Bill 360 says, they conflict each other right now.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl from the Attorney's Office. We have 3 proportionate share agreements currently pending in our office. I've just finished the first one that's been approved by staff. I've been working with Rachel Klein and Sasan Rohani on that. We already have a template type where we can just go ahead and plug in the numbers. They will be required to escrow their fair share payment, their proportionate share payment pending approval by either Mr. Baird if it's under $50,000 or if the proportionate share agreement is over $50,000, it will have to come before the board. They will also have to pay at that time and hold in escrow their impact fees. So it'll be a sizable check. The first one that I'm working on is about $85,000, I believe.
Well, then this goes to exactly what I was talking about. So which one can somebody vest then prior to a building permit if they use Senate Bill 360?
Yes. And we noted that at the time that we brought the ordinance forward, that would be that would be an exception to the pending ordinance.
So, well, I mean, am I the only one that sees a problem with this? That basically somebody can vest where a link is broken ahead of anybody else that's pulling a building permit.
That doesn't include the...
You understand? I mean, y'all see where I'm going with this?
I understand where you're going, but you have to also remember that these are projects that are ready to break ground. When the proportionate share agreement is cut and signed, they are ready to proceed at that time. They've paid all of their impact fees and they've paid their proportionate share fees.
But the problem that I have with that is those that have already broken ground and are ready to pull a building permit might not be able to because they're further ahead but not able to because of what you're talking about.
Pending ordinance would prevent them from doing that.
Right. We pointed out that disparity when we were bringing prop share through, but realized that it would be it'll be corrected when we bring 910.
Okay.
But these 3 that you're already dealing with will get in.
Yeah. Now they're meeting concurrency on every single roadway. They're not in any way
having
not
an
meeting
exception.
They're not having the only exception. The only exception they're getting is the pending ordinance provisions prohibition from vesting before building permit time.
Well, a link had to be broken, Bob.
For them to do the proportionate share.
Yes, that's correct. In each of the 3 agreements, there is a link that is in jeopardy or is above capacity.
I heard that wrong.
Yeah, that's what.
Yes.
And that was the nature of me bringing those 2 together, Commissioner, was the conflict that I was perceiving between Senate Bill 360 prop share and our ordinance right now.
The 3 projects. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Does this all figure into the capital improvements?
Yeah.
Element, the money we're spending over the next year or so? Or is this kind of another subject?
No, impact fees and the money for roads is all intertwined. I don't mean to point that out to you.
It's all connected because it's all county business. Mr. Powell, do you have a comment on?
Yeah, this basically goes back to also when we talked about if you enter into the developer's agreement and do your proportionate share, the developer that enters into the developer's agreement realizes the benefit of the concurrency that he manufactures through doing that, improvement. So that all went back to that. So I remember that. The one thing I wanted to go back to was on paying a proportionate share. I'm not clear on that. If you enter into a proportionate share agreement, you're saying that at the time you enter into that agreement, you have to pay those funds at that time?
Yes. Yeah, because you're vesting concurrency at that time.
Yes.
Now we talked about a project recently where we're going to recommend approval of the project with the condition that they do a prop share. So that project wouldn't have to do it at that time.
So you're not vested until you actually pay
Correct.
the amount and you actually sign the agreement.
Correct.
So that's, okay, I understand it. I understand the two differences, and I was confused over that because I thought we talked about that, and I didn't think that was the way it worked. Thank you.
Okay.
So I can make this really clear in my mind, you can make an exception if you recommend that they come under this, and you give them the time frame that they can pay, you being staff.
No, actually, these all come to you. You're going to have to approve developers' agreements that incorporate proportionate share. So staff can't do anything unless you approve it. And actually, this exception is really...
Well, Bill DeBrawl said something different. I'd prefer they all came to the commission so you're aware of them. He said that if they were under 50,000, I could sign them. I think that you want to be aware because there's several issues and Bill had mentioned that if it was under 50 that I would be signing them, and I think the board, it's up to you. I think you want to be aware of these as they come.
Whatever the pleasure of the board is. And Mr. Beard, I would imagine.
Well, I think we ought to be consistent, and we ought to understand what we're doing and have it all spelled out. And there's not a real understanding.
And to remove this from abstract terms, I mean, let's take Turtle Creek, perhaps. If they were going to input a proportionate share to improve 27th Avenue, they would have to have the ability to capture those trips if they were going to make the improvements at 27th Avenue.
I don't know. You're talking too fast for me.
Yes, I agree.
You understand what I'm saying? I mean, basically, if a developer is going to improve an intersection, we need to give them the opportunity to get those trips for their development.
What
Exactly. That they create.
Yeah.
So how are we going to leave it? Is Joe going to do 50 and below, or are we going to do it, or what do you want to do?
Everything comes back.
Huh?
That's what I'm
I like everything.
Joe wants everything coming back to us.
Yeah.
Well, it's up to you. I mean, it's up to the board. I don't have to sign, but I think there's some times that you would like to be aware of us entering into a proportionate share because it could affect a road or an intersection that you might want.
And it's so new that I'd like to have some kind of a review process just so that, I mean, to make sure that Bob's formula, I got a lot of confidence in you, but make sure your formula is working for you to explain it to us on an individual basis until we get to the point where it may be ready to be put on autopilot, but we're not there yet.
That's fine. I'll bring them to the board for approval then.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. We need a motion to approve this.
Is the public hearing closed?
Yeah, public hearing is closed.
I'll make a motion.
Public hearing is closed.
Did we open it?
It did. Okay, the public hearing is closed.
All right, I'll move that we approve the capital element minus $2.3 million out of recreation that would be spent on the South County building, the South County Park.
Why you want to take my South County Park away?
Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are you against children?
I voted against it earlier on. I think that money can be better spent in other areas.
So much for your motion.
Well,
Wait a second to that motion. Motion dies for.
Wait a minute. Repeat the motion, please.
I made a motion to approve the capital elements portion of this minus $2.3 million that's designated to be spent on a recreation building at the South County Park.
Did that recreation building ever come back to us?
No, we approved it a year and a half ago, and it's not been built because we haven't had the money.
Waiting for the money.
We have it's in the optional sales tax, but there isn't sufficient money to build the size of facility we would like. We've been waiting years to try and build a recreation facility, and we are short right now. We are looking at the money that we're going to get from Windsor if we finally close that deal, that $1 million, and put that towards it. Right now, we have about $2.3 million.
I thought we were going to save that money.
Well,
have we decided what we're doing with that money?
No, you have not.
We have not decided.
We have not, but the state made a requirement that when we went up to the state and they approved the exchange of the land, they had a requirement in there that we could use that $1 million for recreation purposes.
Only.
The other thing is you're looking at, and I'm going back a year and a half, but you're looking at about $400,000+ to operate the building.
Yes, that's
correct. So you
correct.
got an annual operating expense that's going to increase every year of over $400,000 plus the cost of the building.
Anyway, I didn't hear a second to that motion. Is there another motion?
I second it for further discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The way I look at this is, just for long-term planning, first of all, it is a financially feasible project. It has to be. But I think prudence would suggest that as we move forward with this, for us to try to get some matching dollars from the state and try to create a special needs shelter of some kind, because that was the one thing that kept schools from opening up immediately after some of the last two hurricanes. What I envision down there, if we could, I'm not saying we can, but I'd like to leave it in the capital outlay plan.
I think we need to have a discussion on this, not at this moment, but later on down the road, because you might have one idea, somebody else might have another idea, and...
Well, thank you. And my idea is to leave it into the capital improvements element right now with the $2.3 million based on some future planning in the south end of the county with a multi-purpose building.
Okay, I would like to go forward and improve this, not linger on this too much more, but I really don't want to, I want that to come back to us.
Oh, it will. Absolutely.
And I want it to come back to us in the fact that it's not already a given, and that, so I would support, passing this without that element in it.
Making a motion on item?
No, I'm seconding Mr. Wheeler's motion. Commissioner Wheeler.
So you want the 2.3 million taken out?
Right.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second to approve this item, less the $2.3 million for the South County Recreation Building.
Can I mention something? There's two things. We've applied for a FERDRAP grant for additional funds to help on that. We're also looking into a grant if we were to harden it and use it as in time of a hurricane, as another building which would be available. So we are looking into other ways to get additional funding. I just want to mention that.
Okay, I guess I really didn't know that. Maybe you did know that, and that's why you're we all need to know the same thing. I don't mean that unkindly or whatever, but some people push projects and none of us know about it, or everybody, but some know about it, and this, that, and the other. If you've already moved this far with it, it'd be foolish not to go further. But I'm not aware of all this.
I apologize. I probably should have made the commission more aware.
I was thinking of this funding going another direction.
It was in our optional sales tax budget, and I should have made the commission more aware of it, but it was when they approved the 5-year optional sales tax. It's been in there. We've had the money available. There's not enough there, so we haven't moved ahead with the project.
Do you have to have this in this element to apply for the grants? Or can you apply for the grants without this element?
It has to be in this element. It has to be in the, and it was in the element. You'd be removing it. It has been in the element in the past. This is not a change. It's been in there for 2 or 3 years.
I just think it's smart to leave it in there and move forward with, and it doesn't mean that we will do it. It means that we have a plan to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering about the money, if we get the money from the park, the transfer, and that needs to be discussed.
Well, and I think that what's interesting about this is it was in the plan before we even knew about that money coming. That money coming back to the county and the $1 million and where we're going to spend it and have to leave it in recreation. You've got to keep in mind this was back in
I don't want to belabor this, but...
Sure.
We have a motion.
I'll rescind my second because we need to probably go forward with this. This makes
sense. Would you like to change your motion?
Once you have all the information.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion with lack of a second. We through with that one?
Yes.
Motion?
To accept staff recommendation.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
And moved and seconded to approve this item on capital improvements element. Excuse me. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
4-1. Motion carries. I think we need to take a break before we get into this next item. It's almost an hour and a half. We'll be back in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20.
You need to put that.
All right, let's get back to order, please. We're on public item number 9A4. This is Indian River Exchange Packers, Inc.'s request to amend the comprehensive plan to realign the urban services area boundary and to redesignate plus or minus 19.2 acres from Ag 1 to CI and to rezone those 19.2 acres from A1 to IL. This is legislative. Who's going to do this?
I am, Mr. Chairman. The good news is this is the last of the 4 comp plan amendment public hearings that you have today. This is also different from the previous 3 because this is an applicant-submitted comp plan amendment application. And the purpose of this application is to realign the urban service area to include the subject property, and it's also to change the land use designation and the zoning for the property so that the property can be included in the 74th Avenue I-95 commercial industrial node, that the property's land use designation can be changed to commercial industrial, and that the property can be rezoned to industrial. Just going over past actions, the Planning and Zoning Commission looked at this at its March 23rd meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission really struggled with this proposed amendment, and they actually didn't have an affirmative vote for any motion, which came out to a de facto denial. You considered this at your May 2nd meeting, and you did vote to transmit the amendment to DCA. When we got back our ORC report, DCA did not have any objections to this amendment. I know you're familiar with this issue because we discussed it quite a bit back in May, but let me just go over the facts again. The property is highlighted on this map. It's shown in blue. You can see it's on the east side of 74th Avenue, and it's on the south side of Oslo Road. The shaded area here is all commercial industrial node within the urban service area. The unshaded area is all non-urban service area that's designated agricultural in the comp plan. The property's a 19.2 acre parcel, and it's currently used as a citrus packing house. And as I indicated, the requested land use amendment is to change the AG1 land use designation to commercial industrial, to rezone the property from agriculture to light industrial, and also to include this site within the urban service area. As I said, the site currently supports a citrus packing house, and citrus packing houses they're different animals. They can appropriately be located inside the urban service area or outside the urban service area. It makes sense to have a packing house located in the ag area where it's close to the product that it's going to be packing. It also makes sense to have a citrus packing house in the urban service area where it's close to the employees that are going to be working there. Consequently, in the county, we have packing houses that meet both sets of locational standards. In fact, really almost all of our packing houses are in the urban service area, mostly along the US 1 corridor. And most of them are not a problem with what I'm going to talk to you about a little later, the issues with the citrus industry, because almost all of them are inside the urban service area and designated commercial industrial. So if there's a problem with the citrus industry, most of the packing houses can transition to another use that is appropriate for the structures that they have. This situation's a little different because this packing house is outside the urban service area, and unless the land use designation is changed, it cannot be used for a general industrial use if all the citrus fruit goes away and there's nothing to pack. But let me orient you to the existing land uses around the site. To the west of the site, directly to the west of the site, is the Ocean Spray facility, just on the other side of 74th Avenue. South of that is the county's landfill. Northwest of Oslo Road, it's mostly undeveloped area within the node, and as you go further west is the Knight Armament facility. 74th Avenue does serve as the urban service area boundary here, and the area outside of the urban service area here is mostly agricultural, with some just scattered residences out there. I do want to tell you that we looked at the same criteria we look at with all comp plan amendments and rezoning. We looked at concurrency, comp plan consistency, environmental impact, and compatibility. With respect to concurrency, even though there is an existing facility on the site, we looked at what the additional impact on services and facilities would be if the site were fully developed out. There was a concurrency analysis, and we determined that there is sufficient capacity in all the concurrency facilities to incorporate development of the entire 19.2 acres. The criteria that we looked at most closely with this request was consistency with the comp plan. Our comp plan is pretty tight. It's pretty specific, and the whole concept of the comp plan is it shouldn't be easy to amend. It shouldn't be easy to change, but it should be changeable if the circumstances warrant it being changed. In this case, the policy that we looked at most closely was the policy that I referenced before, and that's policy 14.3. And that policy says one of 4 criteria needs to be met in order to change the comp plan. And that is that the comp plan change needs to either correct a mistake, correct an oversight, relate to a change in circumstances, or be a swap. In this case, we feel there's a significant change of circumstances that warrants us making a change that normally wouldn't be done. And there are a number of factors that led to that conclusion. First of all, back when the comp plan was developed in 1990, we looked at this property specifically to determine whether or not it should be included within the node boundary. And actually, staff at that time felt it should be included within the node boundary, but the property owner at that time didn't want to. And I think it was mostly because of concern with water and sewer, and that he may have to connect, and that would be a significant cost. But as I mentioned to you, because packing houses are appropriate uses both within and outside the urban service area, it really wasn't important whether it was in the node or not in the node. So it was not included in the node at that time. Now, things have changed significantly, and we see it all around us. We see that the groves that are being plowed under, we see that the groves that aren't being maintained. We know that hurricanes, canker, diaprepes, citrus greening, tristasia, all of these have really caused a significant decline in the production of fruit, and we see more and more packing houses not opening or opening for shorter periods of time. And we have recognized and we agree that this is a significant change in circumstances, and staff feels that it is appropriate to look at this property from the perspective of what do those circumstances mean in terms of land uses for the subject property. And in this case, as I mentioned, when there is a citrus packing house outside of the urban service area, it's allowed only for agricultural type uses. It can't incorporate a manufacturing facility, a distribution facility, a warehouse. It cannot have its use changed to anything like that if it's outside the urban service area. If it's inside the urban service area, it can be changed to a use that is consistent with the structure of the building. And that's why when staff analyzed this situation, looked at where the property was, what we recommended in 1990, when we looked and determined that it is a logical extension of the urban service area, that's why staff determined that this would be appropriate change. As I said, this situation isn't unique, but it's almost unique. Almost all of the other packing houses in the county are within the urban service area. Almost all of them are designated commercial industrial on the comp plan. Almost all of them can transition into a non-agriculture use without any problem. In this case, we've got this packing house here. There's a high probability that there won't be citrus to pack sometime in the future, whether it's 2 years or 5 years or 8 years or 10 years. That is a high probability in the future. And if this property maintains its agricultural land use designation and zoning, it can be used only for agriculture uses. And if there aren't any other agriculture uses that it can transition into from a packing house, then essentially that facility can't be used. And the facility would probably have to be raised, and the property would have to be used for something else. It could, right now, it cannot be used, as I said, for other industrial types of uses that are consistent with and similar to a citrus packing house. Because of all those considerations, because of the nature of the citrus industry, because of the decline in the amount of crop, and because of the likelihood that there won't be enough citrus to pack in the future, staff feels that this is a change in circumstances that is significant enough to warrant a change to this particular piece of property. As I said, those are the criteria that we looked at most closely and that we struggled with in dealing with this particular issue. From an environmental impact, the site's already significantly impacted, and this change really won't make any difference. From a compatibility standpoint, we feel this is a logical extension of the node. And actually, a change in the land use really won't change the actual use of the property that much. In essence, a packing house is a light industrial use right now, and that's what the proposed zoning and proposed land use designation is. The property to the west is the Ocean Spray facility, and that's an industrial facility. The property to the northwest will eventually be developed in some kind of commercial or industrial uses. So we feel it is definitely compatible with and an extension to the commercial industrial uses to the west. It is an intrusion into the ag area to the east of 74th Avenue, but it's mostly groves to the east and the south and southeast, and groves and agriculture and scattered residential to the north of Oslo Road and northeast. So staff feels that the proposed change will be compatible with the area. After all that, our conclusion is that the proposed changes are compatible with the surrounding area. They're consistent with the comp plan. They meet the concurrency requirement, and they won't cause any additional environmental impacts. So staff recommends that you adopt this amendment to change the land use designation and rezoning.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions of staff? Hearing none, I'll open this as a public hearing. Anyone from the audience have any comments? Mr. Johnson?
Bob Johnson, Corwin subdivision. I drive by Ocean Spray regularly, and I don't see any operation going on there, so I have to assume that this plant is no longer going to be functional. Is that a true statement?
I don't know. Is Ocean Spray shut down?
Yes, they have closed their pectin plant, but I don't know what the future is going to be. I don't know whether another citrus or processor or some other comparable use will go in there.
The other question I have is Mr. and Mrs. Livingston, during the visioning process, submitted a request with comments from Chester Clem on an Oslo corridor plan similar to the Route 60 corridor plan to be approved. And the county has responded, and I was just wondering what the status would be. And with all these changes being made and all that, it seems like there ought to be a urgency to get that implemented.
Bob?
Thank you.
Actually, we have. We have implemented in all other corridors road that addresses US 1 and Oslo and major roads like that, and we essentially apply State Road 60 corridor plan standards to it, and Stan can address any detailed questions you have on it.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bruce Parquette. I practice at 756 Beachland Boulevard, and I represent Indian River Exchange Packers, the applicant. Just wanted to point out that we're here to answer any questions, and Mr. Hamner's in the back to answer any questions you might have about the citrus industry. He did hand me a note that said you might want to let them know that just on Friday, the United States Agriculture Department announced that the states have lost 123,000 additional acres of citrus in the past 2 years. So it is an ongoing situation, and this is a necessary measure to provide a soft landing for some of those folks that have stayed.
Is the closing of the Ocean Spray directly related to
it really has,
the citrus business?
I don't know the answer to that. I wouldn't think
it's a production problem, but also an economics issue too. I mean, it's.
I have no knowledge of that, sir.
Okay, thank you.
It's both.
Any questions of Mr. Barquette?
No.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Any further comments from the audience?
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve staff recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
You opposed?
Same as before.
3 to 2?
3 to 2.
3 to 2.
Same as before, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. The next item is another public hearing, 9A5, Sunburst Encore LP's request to rezone plus or minus 6 acres from CG to CRVP. This is quasi-judicial, and anyone that wishes to speak on this needs to be sworn in. But so anyone who wishes to speak, please stand and be sworn in by the clerk.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Okay, Bob?
I hope I didn't give you too much optimism when I said the last item was the last of the 4 comp plan amendment public hearings, because you do get to hear me one more. This is a non-comprehensive plan amendment public hearing. Actually, this is a pretty simple rezoning. This is a rezoning of a piece of property from one commercial district to another, and it's from general commercial to commercial recreational vehicle park. I think you're probably all familiar with the property. It's only 6 acres in size, and it's under the same ownership as the property to the south. So we got one big parent parcel, and you can see on the aerial here, the property to the south is currently zoned commercial recreational vehicle park, CRVP, and it's developed with recreational vehicles. I do want to tell you that both of these zoning districts are commercial, so they both have to be located within a commercial industrial node. So commercial recreational vehicle parks are different from mobile home parks. Mobile home parks are for permanent residential use. That's why Heron Cay, Countryside, Village Green, those are in residential areas, the higher density residential areas. Commercial recreational vehicle parks can locate only in commercial and industrial areas. And the purpose for this rezoning is to get the zoning necessary so that the commercial recreational vehicle park can expand onto this piece of property. Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-0 to recommend that you approve this. The subject property already has the office for the recreational vehicle park on it, and that is a use that's allowed in the general commercial district, which is fine. But there's additional property on this part of the site which can accommodate additional recreational vehicles, and that's the applicant's request to change the remainder of this property that's currently west of the office to CRVP zoning. The rest of the property that doesn't include the office is wooded and undeveloped right now. To the north of this property and south of 510 is the McDonald's, or south of 512 is McDonald's. To the north of that is the old Stuckey's, and actually the property around the old Stuckey's was just recently annexed into the city of Fellsmere. Actually, this is Fellsmere's first annexation east of I-95. So the property on the north side of 512 here, east of 95, is in the city of Fellsmere. The property to the west of the subject property and on the other side of I-95 is part of the Anson tract, which is also in the city of Fellsmere. And the property to the northwest, part of that is in the city of Fellsmere. And all of the areas that I just referenced are designated commercial. The northeast part of the Anson tract is generally programmed for commercial in Fellsmere's plan. Fellsmere has a hotel site just on the northwest corner of 512 and I-95, and the property on the northeast part of 512 and I-95 is commercial. And just to the east of the subject property are some lots in the Vero Lake Estate subdivision that are along, adjacent to, and south of County Road 512, and those are also zoned commercial. We looked at the criteria with this request that we look at with all. We looked at concurrency, comp plan consistency, environmental impact, and compatibility. From a concurrency standpoint, this is exempt from the concurrency test. There's no change in the maximum intensity going from one commercial use to another, so there's no problem there. From a comp plan consistency standpoint, this is consistent with the comp plan. The subject properties in a commercial industrial node, the current zoning district and the requested zoning district are both commercial zoning districts which are allowed in the commercial industrial node. So it's consistent with the comp plan map, and we looked at all the policies in the comp plan, and this rezoning is consistent with the comp plan. From an environmental standpoint, about 2/3 or 3/4 of this site is undeveloped. It's wooded, but there wouldn't be any more additional impacts from changing it to CRVP than would be if it were developed with its current CG zoning. The property is not environmentally sensitive or environmentally important, and when the subject property comes in for development, they'll have to meet the county's tree protection upland set-aside requirements. So there won't be any significant adverse environmental impacts with the change. From a compatibility standpoint, staff feels that this is compatible with the surrounding area. It will be an extension of the recreational vehicle park to the south. Any additional development will be on the west side of the property, closer to I-95. The property to the east, even though it is in Vero Lake Estates, is designated commercial, and this is a use that fits in, and it actually is less intense than the CG zoning district. The CRVP district is almost a residential district in nature, so if you look at intensity, it's less intense than the general commercial district, so you'd assume that there'd be less impact on adjacent properties. In conclusion, staff feels that the proposed rezoning's compatible with the surrounding area, consistent with the comp plan. It is exempt from concurrency. There won't be any additional environmental impacts, and staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions of staff?
Yeah, I've got some. I don't know if they can answer them or not. First, I got several questions, but do they offer annual leases? I see they're here, and I believe the representatives. In fact, maybe I can wait until they come up and speak and ask them.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
You want to go ahead and go into the public hearing?
Are you ready to go to public hearing?
Yeah.
All right. It's now the public hearing. Go ahead.
Gordon Rubin, owner's representative for ELS. We're developers and owners of the park. No, we do not offer annual leases.
You do seasonal leases?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also, I know there's a lot of units that are there year-round that are stationary. I mean, it doesn't look like they move in and out on a regular basis. Do you know what percentage that is?
I do not off the top of my head.
Okay. And
how are they there then if it's not by an annual lease?
They're transient. They're there part. I believe it's 3 weeks they're allowed, and then they leave and come back.
But the unit stays there?
Yes, sir.
So how do you, if you have a seasonal lease, how does that work? Do they pay a monthly fee 12 months a year?
Well, no, they're rented on I believe it's a 3-week basis. They rent 3 weeks, they leave their unit there, they take it with them and come back. It's designed to be, travel and network. Networks travel all around the county or the state or the country and come on back and forth.
Oh, yeah, you're part of what, Encore? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and of Bob, I'd like to ask a question. I was reading in here, future land use element objective number 1 states that the county will have a compact land use pattern. Would you define compact for me?
Compact would be non-sprawl. It would be.
Can you give me a number?
Can't give you.
Sprawl and compact can have wide variations and definitions depending on who's defining it.
Yeah, and generally the compact land use pattern is really exemplified by the county's urban service area. The urban service area ensures that the higher intensity development occurs in a compact manner, which means not spread out as much.
Mr. Chairman?
That clears it up.
I'm trying to digest that profound statement. Go ahead.
Means whatever you want it to mean.
My question is, I guess, if this were to come before us, it probably, in fact, after this rezoning request under the comp plan change, if it did pass, it would not come before the commission. It would come maybe before planning and zoning in a site plan, just like a multifamily development would.
Actually, it probably wouldn't come before Planning and Zoning Commission. Staff has the authority to approve non-residential up to a certain threshold.
Okay. Well, that's the nature of my question is what buffering requirements would this fall under? Residential, commercial, corridor? Which one of the plethora of buffering requirements would this? And I'm just thinking looking from the south, from the McDonald's, or from the north to the south.
Actually, we have specific buffer requirements for the CRVP district, and they are along all major streets abutting a recreational vehicle park, and the other boundaries of the recreational vehicle park a minimum 50-foot buffer yard with a type B landscape buffer and 6-foot opaque feature shall be provided.
Okay, so that'd be stronger really than, the 50-foot stronger than any kind of buffer we have at this time.
And
Okay.
one last question, Bob, I guess. This is allowed within the commercial district. What all could be allowed in that? If it goes to this and then later on they want to take that facility out and use it for another land use, what options do they have in that area under that particular zoning for commercial? And in other words, it would have to stay, well, I guess you could rezone it anything.
It could be rezoned back to general commercial, which would give them a lot more flexibility. As CRVP zoning, they don't have many uses at all.
Okay, thank you.
We're still under the public hearing. Anyone else wish to be heard? I'll close the public hearing. Any comments?
Renee had something.
Renee, I'm sorry, come forward.
Good morning. Renee Renzi, Waverly Place and Civic Association of Indian River County. Something came out in Mr. Keating's presentation that caught me by surprise, and I wondered if I was the only one, that Fellsmere had annexed east of I-95?
Yes.
When was that?
Within the past year, even less than that, maybe a couple months.
Actually, within the past 2 weeks.
2 weeks, goodness.
Did that have to come before the county commission at all, or they can just do it?
Yep.
They can just do it.
Sovereign city of
Take Sebastian over.
And change the land use.
Right.
Huh. And while I'm up here, a question's burning in my mind and I can't get it out. That previous item you had about capital improvements, and Mr. Keating mentioned the whole idea of this was to stop wish lists, have things funded before they are included in any capital improvements operation. He just mentioned an amount of $350 million for highway improvements. Are there any big, once the county administration building is finished, the county jail is enlarged, the emergency building is built and all that, are there any big ticket items down the road that the public should know about?
Yes, roads, a very big item is roads. They're about $320 million.
Yeah, he mentioned that, the roads, but beyond roads?
Well, we're going to have
South County Library?
we have the library. We also have, recreation facilities that we have to, per our comp plan, we've included.
Well, you mentioned the 2.3 million recreation building, yeah. But that doesn't come anywhere near 350 million for roads. And I was wondering if there was something that whopping that people should be prepared to.
What I can do is I can get you a copy of all those items after the meeting. What I'll do is I'll have someone give you a copy and you look through it and you'll see all the items that we're proposing to do over the next 5 years.
Okay, thanks very much. I should have got up at that time, but you got into this nitty-gritty and you were mentioning amounts of 85,000 and that sort of thing, and it was not anywhere near what I was concerned about, so.
Yeah, and the county administration buildings are only 54 million. I don't know where the press keeps getting 80 million.
Oh, yeah, I know all about the
They have
county
a problem with
administration
figures
building.
sometimes.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks very much.
Thank you, Renee. Any further comments from the public?
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Number 6, public hearing to adopt ordinance to repeal section 305.09 of the Code of Indian River County to eliminate the additional $3 fine imposed under the Doherty-Schlossberg Driver Education Safety Act.
Where's the resolution?
It's on.
Yes, Commissioners, earlier you had asked to repeal the $3 civil traffic penalty, and in accordance with your direction, staff prepared this ordinance. I wanted to draw to your attention that we're keeping the Traffic Education Program Trust Fund in place so that any previously imposed $3 fees can be added to that fund.
Thank you. Any comments by folks? Anybody from the public wish to be heard? Or lowering the traffic tickets by $3? No one cares about that? Okay.
Move approval.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 7 is a public hearing, September 19, 2006, ordinance amending the definition of allowable water activities in a park or recreational area.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, currently surfing is allowed within guarded areas at 2 of our beaches, Wabasso and Round Island. Our existing ordinance states that no surfing is allowed in guarded areas. So staff wanted to conform the ordinance to the existing facts.
Okay. Any questions? Anybody from the public wish to be heard?
Move approval.
I'll
Hearing's
second that
closed.
discussion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this item. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. I'm sorry.
Just real quick, I just wanted to confirm that the difference between surfing, this doesn't preclude a boogie board or something along those lines from taking place at all of our county parks in front of the Parks and Recreation and our lifeguards. This is just, the surfboard is defined as?
Surfing with a surfboard with a leash.
Okay.
Yes.
And everybody knows the difference between a boogie board and a surfboard.
I believe so,
Okay,
Commissioner.
just making sure. That
Surfers have arrived. Would you have any comments under public input?
That's our head lifeguard.
Yeah, they're surfers.
Yeah.
Both of them. You guys have any comments, seriously? No? Okay. Public hearing's closed, and the vote is, the motion been made. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, where are we?
Public notice.
Public notice items. Notice of scheduled public hearing October 3rd, 2006, Indian River Drive North, petition water service, Indian River County project number UCP-2632. That will come up at our October 3rd meeting. County administrators matters. Cost of living adjustments?
Yes, I just need the commission to approve the cost of living. We checked with the Bureau of Statistics, and COLA's running 4.1%, so we're recommending that you give the Board of County Commissioners employees a 4.1% COLA effective October 1.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Departmental matters, nothing much there. Turn a page. Under Public Works, 11I, number 1, property acquisition, 8866 91st Court, County Road 510, widening and improvements, county project number 0610, Woody Family Holding, Inc., owner.
I'll move
Motion?
approval.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded.
Yep.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Number 2, 43rd Avenue widening and drainage improvements workshop, comments and staff recommendations.
Move staff recommendation, approve alternative number 1.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Alternative number 1, motioned. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Number 3, amendment number 1 to civil engineering and land surveying agreement for intersection improvements at State Road 60 and 43rd Avenue, and widening of 43rd Avenue to 5 lanes from State Road 60 to 26th Avenue. Discussion?
Didn't we just talk about that being 4-lane divided?
This is north of Road 60.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I'm, yeah. No, oh, yeah, right. Okay, got it.
Move staff recommendation, alternative number 1.
Do I have a second?
Second.
No, you made the motion. You can't second it, too.
I didn't make it. Wesley did.
Okay. We have a motion and a
Try to
second.
keep up.
All in favor say aye. All in favor say aye, please. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Utility services. Bella Vista Isles, 6-inch force main construction on 26th Street.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. J2, Utilities Department Operations Center, approval of change order number 7 for various changes. Approval of final pay request and release of retainage. Indian River County project number UCP-2229.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Under discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Number 3 is Carl Heights subdivision petition water service, 6th place, west of 27th Avenue, Indian River County Project Number UCP 2448, Resolution 4, Final Assessment.
Move to approve the attached resolutions.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Under County Attorney, a county attorney wishes to advise us of a county attorney-client session, a closed session, which I believe will take place at 1 o'clock today. Marion, would you read the notice, please?
Yes, Commissioner, I would like to read the notice at 1 o'clock because it seems that this meeting will end sooner. So at the conclusion of this meeting, we would need to temporarily adjourn and continue the meeting till 12:55. Everyone would come back here, we'd reopen the meeting, and I would read the required language.
Okay. You're not going to read it now?
I could read it now and I could read it again, but I believe under the statute we should read it immediately before.
Okay, we will meet back in here about 5 of 1.
Yes, sir.
Read the notice and we'll adjourn to the privacy of the conference room.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Under Commissioners' items, Sandra Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed that October we have 4 meetings, 3rd, 10th, 17th, and 24th. And in talking to staff, I would recommend that we could only have 3 meetings and all business would be transacted. The 17th or the 10th looks, the 17th probably.
Is that a motion or?
Yeah, I so moved that, that we not meet the 17th of October.
I'll second that.
We'll still meet
The other
3 times. We'll be off on the 17th and then whatever the final Tuesday is?
The 24th.
24th. Okay, those were 2 days off?
No.
No.
We're going to meet the 24th.
24th. We'll meet 3 times. We'll meet.
3/10/24.
Yes.
3/10/24.
What the day? The other one, we're going to be off on the 17th plus the 5th Tuesday, which is what date? 31st?
No.
Mm-mm.
We're not going to meet on the 5th Tuesday?
Instead of 4 meetings, she's making it 3.
3. And we never meet the last Tuesday of the month.
Right.
Unless.
I thought there were 5
But she's
Tuesdays
full.
in October. I don't have my calendar.
There is. October 31st is Halloween.
Okay, we'll still be off on the 31st.
Yes.
Okay, that's the point I'm trying to make.
Eat chocolate.
We're
All
going to
Hallows
meet.
Eve.
Oh, okay, good trick. Okay, we have a motion to delete the meeting of the October 17th. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Wesley's going to be here by himself.
Every
But
morning.
no business will be transmitted, Mr.
Now, what makes you think I may have something up that sleeve?
Under Special Districts and Boards, we have Solid Waste Disposal District, Florida Power and Light Easement Form. Somebody going to address this item?
I'll approve the form.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And the Environmental Control Board, approval of minutes, meeting of August the 22nd, 2006.
Move to approve the minutes.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And final item is C2, release of lien, Tim Bechtold, Environmental Control Hearing Board, case number 275-98.
So moved.
Move the second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. We are temporarily adjourned until
That would be a recess.
We recess until 12:55 p.m. today.